I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
This is my video update from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Friday midday, June the 9th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the indictment of former U.S. President Donald J. Trump. Another indictment. This is not the New York one. This is a new one. This one's taking place in Miami, Florida. And this one is federal, from what I understand. The New York one was not a federal indictment. This one is the Biden DOJ going after Donald Trump, a current president going after a former president. Well done, Joe Biden. Well done. Everything now changes for the United States. You can now go after political opponents in the United States. But, oh man, but this indictment has to do with Trump taking classified documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. And I used to believe, at least it was my understanding, that a U.S. president can classify any document that he wants at his discretion. Doesn't have to tell anybody. He's the president. He can classify, declassify something, and that's it. No problem. That's how I understood things. And that seemed to be how everything worked up until Donald Trump. For some reason, it seems like Donald Trump is the only U.S. president that doesn't have that power, because the Biden DOJ is saying that the whole declassifying of documents, taking documents outside of their secure environment is a procedure, and Donald Trump did not follow that procedure. You see, it's a checklist, everybody. For Donald Trump, it's this very, very long, extensive checklist that he had to go through in order to declassify a document and take it to Mar-a-Lago, and he didn't go through that checklist. He didn't follow procedures, and now they are going to indict him. Vice President Pence, he had the same thing going on with declassifying documents just last week, and the FBI or the Biden DOJ, whatever, they did an investigation on Pence, and everything's cool. No problem if you're Pence. If you're Biden, you can keep classified, declassified documents, whatever. You can keep them in your garage, next to your Corvette, in your Delaware home, in some think tank office in the University of Pennsylvania. No problem. But if you're Trump, well, there's a procedure that you have to follow. Oh, boy. So now I understand why Nikki Haley and Pence and even Chris Christie, why they're going to be running for president of the United States. Because the establishment, the Uniparty, the rhinos like McConnell and Lindsey Graham, they told Nikki Haley and former VP Pence and Chris Christie, they said, yeah, absolutely, run for president. Go for the Republican nomination in 2024. Don't worry about Trump. We'll take care of Trump. That's what they told Haley. Haley called McConnell. She said, yeah, I'll run for president, but, Trump's going to take this. There's no way I can beat Trump. And McConnell said, Nikki, don't worry about it. We'll let us take care of Trump. You run for president. You're hawkish. You're really big on war and escalation and conflict, the military-industrial complex. You run for president. We'll let us handle Trump. There is no way that they're going to let Trump win the nomination for the Republicans. They are going to do everything in their power. The Biden White House, the Republican establishment, the permanent state, they are going to do everything in their power to prevent Trump from getting the Republican nomination. And they're fine with Biden becoming president again. I mean, McConnell, Lindsey Graham, they're absolutely cool with another 4 years of Biden. Actually, I think they prefer it. I think they like Biden as president. You know, Biden was their buddy in the Senate for 50 years. I mean, they worked with Biden for 50 years. They went to lunch together. They had dinners together. They had their little parties together with Biden. I mean, Biden is their buddy. They've known Biden for 5 decades. So they're absolutely fine with another 4 years of Biden. Trump, they're not going to let Trump get in. They're going to do everything in their power to prevent him from getting the nomination. So that's what's happening. Another Trump indictment. Trump put out a video, and he put out a statement on Truth Social, and he said, America is in decline, and he is exactly right. This is a huge move from the Biden White House. I mean, they've crossed the Rubicon with this one. Now in the United States going forward, in the US, you can go after political opponents. New rules to the game in the United States of America. So Biden has his own scandal brewing, but he doesn't seem too worried about it. But the Republicans, some Republicans, America First Republicans, they're saying that there is a document that the FBI has, and I think it's not even a classified document. Christoforou, the FBI director, has a document from a whistleblower, which shows that Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, and Hunter Biden, they received $5 million payments each from a foreign country. And this payment was made by Ukraine, by an executive in Burisma. Allegedly, this payment was made by an executive in Burisma. $5 million to Bidenopoulos, allegedly, and $5 million to Hunter Biden. And they made this payment, Burisma, in order to secure certain oil contracts, energy contracts. And they needed the Biden, then VP Biden, they needed his help to get the then prosecutor in Ukraine, Viktor Shokin, off Burisma's back to stop the investigation of Burisma. And so they, according to this document from this whistleblower, this source, who from what I understand is a very reputable source, the FBI has used this source before in the past, and they've actually paid this source something like $200,000 for the information that he or she has provided. This source claims that Burisma made these payments to Hunter and to Joe. A very complicated transaction as well. The payments were made in a way that it's going to be very difficult for the FBI to, or for any investigator to really track down the movement of this money. But anyway, the source claims that $5 million was paid to each of them so that they can clear the way for Burisma to secure certain oil and energy contracts and to remove the prosecutor Shokin. And we have Biden on video from when he was vice president in the Obama administration. We have that now famous video, that infamous video, where Biden is at this Atlantic Council event or I forgot if it was the Atlantic Council or some other neocon think tank. And, Biden bragged about how he got the Ukrainian prosecutor fired because he wasn't going to give Ukraine a $1 billion loan unless Poroshenko would fire the prosecutor. And Biden said, son of a gun, he was fired. And everyone laughed and everyone giggled. And you have it on tape. You have it on video, man. It's there on video. So that's pretty much the scandal, the story that is brewing around Biden and Republicans, America First Republicans. I think Comer would be defined as an America First Republican. He is saying that he's going to hold Christopher Wray in contempt because Wray refuses to hand over this document to Congress. Why would the FBI director refuse to hand over a document to Congress when Congress specifically asks for that document? And I've read this is not even a classified document. At least that's my understanding of it. So, this is what they're doing to Trump, and this is how they're protecting Biden. Ukraine, Burisma, all roads lead to Ukraine. Understand why Biden is so committed to Ukraine. This is why. He has been involved in Ukraine for many, many years. And not only Biden, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Pelosi, all of them are, Clinton, all of them have some sort of connection to Ukraine or some sort of business with Ukraine. What country was working with the DNC, with the Democrats, with the Clinton Foundation to derail Trump before he got elected and after he was elected? What country was pushing the whole Russiagate narrative in the United States, or helping to push the Russiagate narrative in the United States? Ukraine. Ukraine, the country that was the first or second biggest donor to the Clinton Foundation. Ukraine was pushing, was helping the permanent state and the Democrats push the Russiagate narrative. The Ukraine embassy in Washington, D.C. was working with the establishment to derail Trump's presidency. It always comes back down to Ukraine, and that is why the Biden White House is so bogged down in Ukraine and so committed to Ukraine. Byron Donalds, I believe he's a House representative. I don't know which state. Florida. Byron Donalds is Florida. He's an America First guy. He tweeted this: on the day members of Congress learned from an FBI document linking then VP Joe Biden to receiving $5 million from Burisma in a pay-for-play scheme, Biden's DOJ announces another phony indictment of the leading candidate for the GOP presidential nomination, Biden's likely opponent and the former POTUS. The mob-like justice system is turning Lady Justice on its head and is the most significant threat to our democracy. Stand with President Trump. Exactly. That is exactly right. The same day that Congress gets more information, or tries to get information from the FBI on this document, linking Biden to Burisma payments and Hunter Biden to Burisma payments, you get a Biden White House DOJ indictment of Trump. A Burisma executive told the FBI source that Burisma had to pay the Bidens because Viktor Shokin, a Ukrainian prosecutor, was investigating Burisma. Shokin was the prosecutor that Biden publicly bragged about getting fired. The $5 million payment was a retainer, according to the source. The Burisma executive allegedly paid the Bidens through so many different bank accounts that it would take investigators 10 years to unravel. The FBI source is a regular, reliable source and has been paid $200,000 by the Bureau. Since we're on the subject of Ukraine and Biden and the United States bogged down in Ukraine and the Biden White House bogged down in Ukraine, Politico ran an article yesterday with the title, White House Anxiously Watches Ukraine's Counteroffensive, Seeing the War and Biden's Reputation at Stake. Senior U.S. officials are convinced that future support for the Ukraine war and President Joe Biden's global reputation hinges on the success of Ukraine's counteroffensive. So the Biden White House is very, very concerned about this counteroffensive that has been launched by the Ukraine military, even though the Ukraine military and the Zelensky regime refused to announce that the counteroffensive has indeed been launched. Politico is saying that it has been launched. Politico is saying that the Biden White House knows that the counteroffensive has started, and they are very, very concerned because things are going very, very badly for the Ukraine military with this big counteroffensive. Further down in the article, Politico writes, a successful Ukrainian counteroffensive would be another foreign policy win Biden can tout, but the administration will still face pressure to address questions Europeans and Ukrainians want answered. Will the U.S. offer security guarantees for Kiev, the imminent deliveries of F-16 fighters, and a concrete path to Ukraine's membership in NATO? Another Biden foreign policy success that he can tout, like what? Like Afghanistan? What foreign policy success is Politico talking about from the Biden White House? The destruction of Ukraine, the deindustrialization of Europe, of Germany, the ramp up to conflict with China. What are these foreign policy successes that they're talking about with the Biden White House? And after a year and a half of this conflict, we're back to where we started, which is Ukraine getting into NATO. That's the reason the world is in this mess. That's the reason the Biden White House is bogged down in Ukraine. And here we are again talking about Ukraine getting into NATO. Or if they can't get into NATO, providing Ukraine with security guarantees, whatever that means. What are they talking about when they mention the words security guarantees? That's the plan now. If we can't get Ukraine into NATO, then security guarantees. All Zelensky had to do a year and a half ago, all he had to do was say, we are going to remain neutral. We're not going to get into NATO. Yes, Ukraine has the sovereign right to join any military alliance it wants. Every country in the world can join any military alliance it wants. But your decisions carry consequences. And your neighbors also have a sovereign right to protect their interests. But here we are again, Ukraine back into NATO. And if we can't get them into NATO, then we're going to cook up some security guarantees. Macron, Schultz, and walk on the wild side, Duda, the president of Poland, they're going to be meeting in France, I believe, on June 12th to talk about security guarantees, to hammer out some sort of plan to offer Ukraine with security guarantees. What does that mean? Shouldn't Schultz, Duda, and Macron, shouldn't they tell their people, their citizens, what the security guarantees mean? Are they going to be signing a bilateral agreement with Ukraine, which states what? That if you're at war, we're at war? Isn't that how world wars start? Isn't that how we had World War I and World War II? Is that the plan? Is Germany going to sign an agreement with Ukraine, providing Ukraine with security guarantees, and Germany gets involved if those security guarantees are threatened or breached? Then Germany is committed via this agreement to enter into conflict? I mean, do Germans want that? Are German citizens up for that? Are French citizens up for that? Or maybe Polish citizens are ready for that. Maybe that is what they want. Maybe they want to confront Russia. A lot of Russophobia. Maybe they're thirsty to go up against Russia and to go after Putin. But they're talking about security guarantees. If we can't get NATO, we have to get security guarantees. They're walking us towards a world war. Maybe they're running us towards a world war. Politico also talked about Biden's other challenges with China and Taiwan and a conflict brewing there. They talked about Saudi Arabia and challenges with Saudi Arabia. Basically, that MBS hates Biden and that Biden hates MBS. And when Saudi Arabia, when they cut oil production like a year ago, according to the Washington Post and the Discord leaks, MBS actually told the Biden White House, if you screw with us, well, I'm going to screw with you back. That's pretty much what MBS told the Biden White House. That's being revealed in the Discord leaks. Anyway, Blinken's going to be traveling, from what I understand, he's going to be traveling to Saudi Arabia, and then he's going to be traveling to China next week. So Blinken's going to engage in diplomacy, and that's going to turn into a disaster because Blinken is a disaster when it comes to diplomacy. But he's going to go to Saudi Arabia, he's going to go to China, and let's see what happens. Politico also talks about India and how India is now posing a challenge to the United States of America. India is a pain in the neck now for the Biden White House because India takes a neutral stance, and the Biden White House doesn't like it. And India announced the other day that they're not going to invite Zelensky to the G20 summit, which is going to take place in India in September. And India, they came out with a statement, the Indian Foreign Ministry. They said, in our opinion, the G20 is attended by the G20 member states and the countries and organizations that we invited. We announced the list of invitees immediately after we took over the G20 chairmanship. That's what the Foreign Ministry, Jai Shankar, said in a statement. Ukraine is not a G20 country. They are not invited to the G20 summit, and that is 100% right. That is 1,000% right. Finally, a country with some freaking common sense and some sense of reality. What is Ukraine doing at a G7 conference or a G20 conference? I mean, maybe if it's a G20 conference of the worst performing economies in the world, then yeah, Ukraine should be invited to that. But it shouldn't be invited to the big economies of the world. And the G20 should not be about Ukraine, which is also something that India is saying. The G20 conference is not about more money and more weapons to Zelensky. The G20 conference is about a whole bunch of other issues that concern the entire world. Economic issues, energy issues, food issues, trade issues. India is so spot on. They don't want Zelensky there. They don't want Zelensky there, first of all, because Modi doesn't like Zelensky. Modi looks at him and he sees a clown. And 80% of the world doesn't like Zelensky. They despise Zelensky. They can't stand Zelensky. They don't want him there. They don't want Ukraine there because they don't want the G20 to turn into this weapons for Ukraine and escalation for Ukraine. And the United States and Europe running around badgering a bunch of countries at the G7 to sanction Russia and to give weapons to Ukraine. They don't want that. India doesn't want that. Brazil doesn't want that. All the countries that are going to be attending the G20 that are not part of the G7, they don't want to deal with Zelensky. They don't want to see him there. They don't want to deal with Ukraine. They don't want to deal with escalation for Ukraine, weapons to Ukraine, money to Ukraine. India is spot on. They are absolutely spot on with this one. Zelensky's not going to be happy about this, but oh well. Tough luck, Zelensky. So CNN, they ran an article yesterday with the title, Ukrainian forces suffer stiff resistance and losses in assault on Russian lines. And according to CNN, Ukrainian forces have suffered losses in heavy equipment and soldiers as they met greater than expected resistance from Russian forces in their first attempt to breach Russian lines in the east of the country in recent days, two senior U.S. officials told CNN. One U.S. official described the losses as significant. That is a direct quote, significant. And listen to what CNN says in the paragraph that I just read. Ukrainian forces suffered losses in equipment and soldiers as they met greater than expected resistance. Greater than expected resistance. You know what the collective West was expecting? I'll tell you exactly what the collective West was expecting. They were expecting the Russians to retreat. They were expecting the Russians to give up territory like they gave up territory in Kharkiv and Kherson. That's exactly what they were expecting. They thought the Russians were going to get scared. They were going to panic. The whole media hype about the big counteroffensive, giving over Leopard tanks and Storm Shadow missiles and all of these things. They thought that the Russians were going to say, you know what, let's cede territory, let's give up territory and create new defensive lines. That's what they were expecting. And that's not what they got. That's what the CNN article is saying. So we did have fierce battles in Zaporozhye, in this area. Actually, fierce battles in Bakhmut, Artemovsk, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, all across the front line. But the real concentration of fierce battles is taking place in Zaporozhye, in this area of Orekov, and the Russians repelled the Ukraine forces. There are some reports that Ukraine managed to gain a couple of meters here and there. And I'm not exaggerating when I say a couple of 10, 20, 50, 100 meters here and there. And I don't even think that those are 100% confirmed. The line remains unchanged. The front lines, for the most part, remain unchanged. The only thing that has changed is that Ukraine has suffered heavy losses, like heavy losses in tanks and soldiers. Even Bild, even the German publication Bild, they had to admit that the Russians are destroying Leopard tanks. They actually ran a story with the title "The Russians have destroyed the first Leopard tank," which means that Bild knows that Russia has destroyed a bunch of Leopard tanks. Bild had to acknowledge this. Leopard tanks are being wiped out by the Russian military. I can see Zelensky traveling to Berlin and asking Scholz for more tanks. More tanks. Germany can give Ukraine more tanks. They can give the Ukraine military more Leopards and more money. The very same military that, according to the Washington Post just yesterday, blew up the Nord Stream pipeline under the command of Zaluzhny. Under Zaluzhny's orders and supervision, the Ukraine military blew up German infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and Olaf Scholz has already given Leopard tanks to this country. He's already given money to this country. And pretty soon, Ukraine's going to beg Germany for more money and more weapons to the very military that attacked Germany. Can you say cucked? Can you say Olaf Scholz is 100%? I won't say the word again. I won't say the word again. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's bad enough that Poland supports a country that flies this black and red flag and has Bandera street names and Bandera statues. I mean, that's bad. But Germany, my God, the Washington Post basically said that the Ukraine military attacked you. And now your Leopard tanks are being wiped out by the Russian military. And pretty soon you're going to be called up to give, you're going to be ordered to give more tanks and more money and more weapons and fighter jets and whatever to Ukraine. That is what the Biden White House is going to order Germany to do, knowing that this country attacked your energy infrastructure. That is sad, man. That is really, really sad. Let's move on now. Let's continue here. So Bild is admitting that the Russians are destroying German German leopards, and Politico is warning the European Union that Austria and I believe it's Slovakia, yeah, Austria and Slovakia, they're going to have elections, and the outcome of those elections may spell trouble for the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. Politico ran an article with the title, "Watch Out, Ukraine. Here Comes the Hungaro-Austrian Empire." Pro-Russian politicians in the vein of Hungary's Viktor Orban are on the rise in Austria and Slovakia. And I just want to let everyone know that Politico has a new term to describe the rise of a sovereigntist view, a sovereigntist government in Austria and Slovakia, and they are calling this Orbanism. Orbanism. This is what Politico said. I'll read you a couple of paragraphs here. Austrian politician Herbert Kickl is pro-Russian, anti-American conspiracy theorist. He's also the odds-on favorite to become his country's next leader and Europe's next big headache. Kickl's far-right Freedom Party has been leading the country's national polls by several points since November, as soaring inflation and a sharp increase in asylum applications fuel discontent with the current government, a coalition between the center-right Austrian People's Party and the Greens, with the other main opposition party, the Social Democrats, plagued by infighting. Kickl's party has the best chance in years to seize power, not to win elections. Nuh-uh. When it's someone they don't approve of, they don't win elections. When they don't approve of these guys, they seize power. You see how they use words? They're going to seize power. They're not going to win free and fair elections. They're going to seize power. That would spell major trouble for the European Union, which is already struggling to cope with Hungary, where nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orban has systematically taken control of all major levers of power and undermined independent media, transforming the country into what critics see as a semi-authoritarian state in the middle of the EU. Austria isn't the only country in the region susceptible to Orbanism. Neighboring Slovakia is also teetering on the brink of a populist revival. The pro-Russian SD, Smer SD, whose leader, former Prime Minister Robert Fico, was forced out of office in 2018 amid a wave of popular protests triggered by the brutal murder of an investigative reporter and his fiancée, is leading the polls ahead of a snap election set for September. Fico has vowed to end Slovakia's military support for neighboring Ukraine if elected. European officials warn that wins by pro-Russian forces in Slovakia and Austria would hand Russian President Vladimir Putin a powerful tool against Ukraine, making it easier for him to undermine sanctions and EU efforts to assist Ukraine. It would be a disaster, a chairman, commission official from the region said bluntly. Yeah, because those sanctions are working so well for the European Union. God forbid Vladimir Putin undermine the success of the 10, soon to be 11 sanctions packages. What a bunch of idiots. What a bunch of fools that write these articles, that come up with these narratives. Yeah, because people they don't approve of may win an election, they're automatically labeled as pro-Putin and far-right pro-Putin. Propaganda from these people is just, it's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. All right, so Orbanism. That's the new word for the day. Don't let your country fall to Orbanism, otherwise known as sovereignty and independence and freedom. That's Orbanism. Looking after your country's best interests and looking after your people's best interests. That's Orbanism. All right, let's do a clown world. Let's do a couple of clown worlds here. We'll wrap this video up. The first clown world, since we're talking about propaganda, has to do with a photo that is all over the interwebs from Visegrad 24, which is a huge pro EU globalist Twitter channel. They put out a tweet with a photo of a young boy. You'll see the picture right now on your screen, a young boy holding up a dog. And this is from the days of the Kakhovka Dam a couple of days ago, with the Kakhovka Dam bursting, being blown apart by Ukraine, most likely. Yeah, they say Russia did it. Okay. Visegrad, they put up this photo, and it says, young Ukrainian boy, keep that in mind, rescuing his dog from drowning after Russia destroyed the Kakhovka Dam. And then, take a look at this photo from 9 years ago. Serbia floods, little kid saving his dog. You see how that works? You see how that propaganda works? Serbia or Kherson? Was the little boy in Serbia, and then he also 9 years later he was in Kherson as well? Oh, that's pretty amazing. And the boy doesn't seem to have aged, and his dog, the dog doesn't seem to have aged. It's still a puppy. Incredible stuff. And and the second clown world is Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg. She is now talking about the Kakhovka Dam, and she put out a tweet the other day, which reads, the ecocide, as a continuation of Russia's unprovoked, full-scale invasion of Ukraine is yet another atrocity which leaves the world lost for words. Our eyes are once again on Russia, who must be held accountable for their crimes. So now that could be a clown world in and of itself. Greta's tweet on what happened with the Kakhovka Dam, but that's not the whole clown world, because to her tweet on the dam, Greta Thunberg's tweet, Zelensky actually responded to Thunberg, and he thanked her for her tweet. So Zelensky actually responded to Greta Thunberg's tweet of ecocide, that Russia, according to Thunberg, is responsible for. Interesting word, ecocide. Thank you, Greta Thunberg, for your tweet, for support Ukraine. Very, very nice of you, Greta. I agree. This is ecocide. Greta, by the way, maybe you have $1 billion so I can buy a home? Just maybe. Maybe $1 billion so I can buy a home. It will be eco-friendly home. Oh, boy. So we have one more. Let's do one more clown world, and we'll wrap this video up here. And in this clown world, we have got, let's see here. We've got this photo of Zelensky with his commanders, strategizing and planning the big summer, spring, winter, fall, summer, fall, spring offensive that Ukraine refuses to acknowledge is taking place. But there they are at the big table, and they're strategizing, right? They're strategizing. But the interesting part about this photo is the people around the table. The people around the table are the high officers, Komarenko Sirski and Tomovsky. They're the ones attending this very important meeting with Zelensky on the big counteroffensive that is counter to you and counter to me and offends you. Those are the people that are strategizing. So where is the commander in chief of the Ukraine armed forces? You would think that for the big counteroffensive, the commander in chief would be there strategizing. Nope, not there. Zaluzhny is not there. Budanov, maybe like the intel chief is there, important meeting, strategizing on the biggest military plan, the biggest military decision that the Zelensky regime will ever make. Maybe you include Budanov? No, Budanov, he's not there. Nowhere to be seen. Interesting, huh? Very interesting. I read a report from a Ukraine Telegram channel, which claims that Zaluzhny is not. He's the commander in chief, but because of disagreements with Zelensky, he's not going to be involved in the big counteroffensive. He's just going to sit this one out. Right? The commander in chief of the armed forces, he's just going to sit this one out. That's how Ukraine's explaining this, and that's how they're explaining this photo. Obviously, what they're doing by putting out this photo, it's deliberate. They're phasing Zaluzhny out. They're getting people accustomed to seeing these other three guys, Sirski and these other three guys, and they're getting people accustomed to life after Zaluzhny. That's why they put out this photo. This is deliberate. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Rockfin, ODYSEE, BitChute, and Telegram. And go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code. Good day. No reverse gear. No reverse gear. Take care.